know nothing about cause and effect.
We have
nothing.
a gentleman who is running our elections who literally came from a dictatorial South American communist country.
Stealing, trafficking, we've got to put a stop to it. All right, I'm actually really pumped about that. That was the first time I've had my intro go out. My buddy Jacob, who is a production wizard, just made that for me. So excellent. Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate the intro. Appreciate the logo. Trying to make this a little bit more professional looking other than the placeholder shoe logo I had there. So once again, Jacob, thank you so much. That's awesome. My guest today, though, is an account that I've been following for years. This guy is freaking hilarious. And you probably either follow him or you know of him because he has probably the most viral picture in the entire world. Literally a generational photo. But without further ado, this is Adam Johnson. You might know him as the Lectern guy or the podium guy, but I'll let him talk about himself. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. I've been following you for a long time. Really proud of your work as well. You do a great job out here making sure that the commies don't sleep all the time.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. So tell us first of all, tell us about yourself for those who may possibly not know who you are.
Well, my name is actually Adam Johnson. I'm known as Via Getty, the podium guy, lectern leader, all these different monikers. But who I am, in my home life, I'm a husband of 15 years, married to a beautiful woman who stood by my side through everything. I can't say enough good things about her. Father of 5 sons, ranging from 10 to 18. Oldest is getting ready to move out and join the military. Very proud of him. And I'm a normal guy. I like smoking meats on the weekends. I'm a carpenter, cook food. That's about it. Just a normal guy.
There we go. And you were an individual who did a very innocuous thing once upon a time and got smashed by the US government for it. And that was obviously January 6th. You were famous for holding a lectern. And I want to talk about that really quick. So I just saw this article on social media. And once again, even in the year of our Lord 2026, we have journalists, and I put air quotes around that, journalists who can't do any modicum of research accusing you of stealing stuff from Congress, from the Capitol, whatever. And what is going, talk about that. Talk about how are you going to get to a point where you start just suing the pants off these guys?
That is eventually the goal. The libelous nature of these articles they put out when they use words synonymous with theft, I've looted, took, taken, all these things. They changed the words up to kind of avoid it. And defamation suits, libel suits are very difficult because you have to prove that there was malice intent with this. And because I am running for political office, because I am, very well known on the internet, it's difficult to prove intent in court. So these cases a lot of attorneys don't want to pick them up. So a lot of people are asking me why I haven't sued people yet. And it's because, well, I can't find attorneys who will take these cases. And it's mostly because, we are 5 years removed from this thing. The government, the White House just put up a new website about January 6th, telling the truth about it. And we're still a little bit a ways from, the normies, the people who aren't chronicling online, the people who aren't in the news, people who aren't, actually knowing what's going on in their country from knowing this. And in real time, I have to correct people, even neighbors. They still think I stole things. I'm like, well, that never happened, and it's explaining it. But that's a product of people like Jimmy Kimmel going on air the day up saying that I stole something. You say it one time, and then it becomes the truth forever.
Yep.
And that's suing people is
that's what journalism has turned into. It's turned into they know they're protected for the most case, and that's why it is so important that folks like Trump have sued them and held them financially liable for big amounts of money, and he has the resources to do that because little guys like us don't. We just kind of have to put up with it. I had a hit piece on me from Business Insider the other day, and it wasn't a big deal. It was but what they wrote in it was that they had reached out to me and I refused to respond or whatever. I'm like, you never reached out to me. And that's
Yep.
just a lie. And that's contextually, that's important when you start to build these narratives. So when you get a bigger story like yours, a bigger event in history, and what they'll do is they'll blast the airwaves with garbage. They know that anchoring effect is going to stick in place and that people are going to believe the first thing they heard. And then it's your responsibility as the guy who was slandered to dig your way out of that hole. And they know this, and they know they can get away with it because they own the vast media apparatus.
Absolutely, and it extends out from that too. They also own a lot of the local DAs, a lot of the local justice departments. So when you bring up a case, it's in the jurisdiction that you live in, and hopefully live in a decent one who will actually hear the case. And you're exactly right. We are smaller guys, so suing these people, it costs a lot of money to sue someone. And these people have attorneys; they have deep pockets, and I would assume those deep pockets are lined with NGO funded sponsorships because I don't know how they're staying in business. Axios also did one to liken to your story. Axios stopped by my house yesterday, put up an article saying they called me, they stopped by my house trying to get a reach of me, they messaged me, called me. They only stopped by my house. And the person who did this is a huge LGBTQIA plus two community member. And they doxed me online in the article they released. They said the city that I live in, and I realized that it's easy to find where people live. We pay tax on houses, but when you say the city that I live in, and I went to his house, you're narrowing it down. I have a very common name, Adam Johnson. It's very easy to figure out he lives in Florida because I say I live in Florida. And granted, I've already been doxxed before. My address is everywhere. But again, to anyone listening who thinks they want to come knock, please don't. I will shoot you. I don't have a problem with it. We have an arsenal here, and we're not afraid of that. All of my kids know how to shoot too, so don't come here.
And
Don't come
and
here
people need to
unless you want
understand.
food. Unless you want food and to hang out, come on over. I will feed you. We'll have a good time.
Yeah. People need to understand that these aren't tough guy threats. These aren't internet threats. These are folks like you are husbands, you're fathers, you have families, and what these reporters are doing, they know what they're doing. This is targeted activism masquerading as journalism. And they do this intentionally so they can say, all I was doing was reporting the facts, boss. No, they're not. No, what they are intentionally doing is they're making it easy for everybody out there because not everybody out there is a sleuth who can go out and find this kind of information. Yes, is it readily available if somebody knows what they're doing? It is. But then you have to circulate it online. But if they already have the platform and the reach to push that kind of information and put your face out there, put your address and key details, and they'll just word it just correctly. So it's like, oh, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just telling the facts. Just journalism. Yeah, that's targeted
Absolutely.
activism.
Absolutely. And it's I think it's gonna get worse. I don't think it's gonna get better. And it's rats in a bucket. It's what it is. They are in a corner and they feel like need to eat their way out because we are doing something. I like what ICE is doing, man. If you ask me 5 years ago, do I think the government is overreaching? And my stance would be very libertarian, where I think that personal rights, individual liberties, the government should never step. It should be smaller. But what I went through, what I experienced, what I see in a day to day, because I am now inundated with news and I do keep up with things, I don't see another way out but to, draw a hard line and say we need to recapture territory. And it may look messy. You may have questions how we're going about things. We may, you know, in a soft way violate Fourth Amendment principles, but these people mean to imprison us and kill us, and they have done both. So it's time for us to wake up and realize there is no other way out of this but to stand up and push back and fight back.
And you're 100% right. We allowed them to stomp all over the Constitution for so long. We allowed them to flood our country with I mean the invasion that took place was not done by through the intentions of bleeding hearts and goodwill. That was not why they flooded our interior with 15 million people. It was done intentionally for purpose. That's why we have all the fraud going on. That's why we have people's votes being bought provably. We can prove that entire communities' votes are being bought. All of this took place over so long a period of time while we were called racist and xenophobes and put a phobe on there. We're a phobe. We're scared of everything, right? And so now you're right. We have to draw a hard line in the sand and say enough is enough. And
Yes. Otherwise, Martha's Vineyard, would have accepted all of these migrants that DeSantis sent there, right? They don't they don't practice the message that they preach. And you're absolutely right. They are buying votes. They are putting these communities together. And I always say this, like, my crime was not what they said it was. My crime was going to the ivory tower and airing my grievances with the government directly and in person. They don't care about the community you live in. They don't care about the town you live in. These cultures they're bringing in that are destroying and uprooting decades, generational lives and destroying them. They don't care about that. I actually think that is the intention. The intention is to pacify, if not even eradicate, what American exceptionalism is, and then to replace it with people who are basically activists and pay for play warriors to make sure that if you have a problem with it, they will hunt you down and find you. That's why journalists do things like, this guy lives in this city if you're interested.
That's a fact. Speaking of, I should have brought this up a little bit ago, but one of the things we were talking about earlier was the candlelight vigil that that Congress just had for January 6th, and they are they are so dead set on keeping this dead body from falling apart, from just trying to keep some sort of warmth in this dead body, just hit it with as many shocks as you can to keep it alive, that they're going out now, and really it's just embarrassing by any standard, by even a leftist standard. It is embarrassing what they're doing. These very, you can't even call it pearl clutching at this point. Pearl clutching is like a very momentary thing. Oh, how could you, in this moment? This is
Knee jerk
so over the
reaction.
top. It's so theatrical. It's so, but and if I put this clip out, I'll put the clip in there of them doing this this candlelight vigil that they held. But talk about
Schumer
that.
comes out here. Schumer comes out here and he says things like, the Capitol Police officer who were brave and stood up for us. You think about, this was 5 years ago, and 6 months prior to January 6th, all of these people were championing defunding the police. They were egging on rioters to assault police. Over 900 officers sustained injuries and were assaulted
That's
because of
insane.
BLM protests. Where is the plaque they're demanding being hung in the Capitol to honor the people who David Dorn lost his life? David Dorn lost his life. Where is the left talking about this? They don't actually care about the police. They don't actually care about Back the Blue. None of those things. They care about their self-protection and their safety. And the only reason they push January 6th is it's not even, these vigils they hold is not because they actually feel bad. It's not actually because they feel, this was a bad thing that happened. They are scared. Look at the photos from that day. These cowards climbing under their chairs and seats because some people were walking through velvet ropes. They are cowards. And what they did when they stole our election, and I'm a firm believer they did, what we saw in Fulton County come out a few weeks ago, they stole our election. And when we showed up to protest, they were cowards, they were scared. And that's why they have to make sure this concept is institutionalized in every broadcast every single year, because they know if the people ever rise up again, it's not going to be as peaceful as it was last time.
That's well put. That's a fact. And I'm curious about that. You just talked about Fulton County. Talk about that. What kind of fraud did you guys see?
So 315,000 illegal votes were counted in the 2020 election. There was a hearing done on this, and the county officials said themselves, yes, these were not ballots that had signatures. The signatures were not checked. Envelopes, they don't put in envelopes. There were no creases in them. None of these ballots should have been counted. Statistically speaking, which is always the thing I go to because we can talk emotionally, but I'm a pragmatic guy. Trump lost Georgia by 12,000 votes. If 315,000 votes came in that were illegally counted, never should have been processed, that means that 97% of them had to go in one direction alone. That is statistically impossible. It does not happen. Even in liberal cities, I mean, their liberal cities are typically, their vote splits are like 80-20 in the most like severe scenarios. So even an 80-20 split does not explain that 96-97% counting towards one direction. It does not. And that's just
Yeah.
one balance. That's not all the ballots that came in.
I interviewed a guy the other day, and we were talking about Tarrant County in Texas, and pretty crazy stuff coming out of that. I mean, as far as who was running their elections, they had a guy he was a Smartmatic engineer from Venezuela who had gone to the Philippines. I've watched the YouTube video. The Philippines excoriated this guy. They had him in front of their parliament, and they were tearing him apart, accusing him of fraud and stealing their election. And then he came to Texas and he took over. I can't recall which position, but basically he was in charge of the elections in Tarrant County, Texas.
Supervisor of
And
elections, probably then.
yeah, probably. He actually had 2 different positions, but now he's the executive, or he's the vice president of Heart. I can't remember the name of the system. It's Heart Sync or something like that. But it's basically the software we use here, the system that uses the Smartmatic programming here in Texas, and that's why we're fighting so hard to get these hand ballots. But Tarrant County, they did an audit on it, and it's one of the first places where citizens have really jumped into the process. In fact, the Secretary of State, she charged them $1,500 per FOIA just to give publicly available information on the data voter rolls. And so it's one of these things where they're trying to price people out, but they paid it. They paid it. They paid the money for all these FOIA requests they had. But what they found was, I mean, dozens and dozens of people listed multiple times under just a little bit of different misspelling, different addresses. Um, People that no longer live there. I mean, it was an absolute mess of thousands of votes, and that's a big deal when you're talking about a county election. But they do
Absolutely.
this in these concentric pockets around there, and you got to keep in mind, Tarrant County in Texas was at least a very red area, and they've been trying to pull Texas blue for so long that they're flooding the state with tens of millions of dollars, George Soros dollars, factually, and then they are trying to straight up just flat out steal and alter the databases and plug all these different people in. So it's happening everywhere.
It is. And like 2 points to that. The first one is we should be very clear when we speak. It is not just the Democrats who steal elections, in my opinion. You cannot explain to me how Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Mitch McConnell have their seats without that. You can't. You can't explain it without that because no one likes them. The Republican Party doesn't like these people. And the excuse like, well, we got to keep their seats. They're good fundraisers. I'm sorry. No. Um, because what it does is well, look at Thomas Massey then. Everyone hates Thomas Massey, right? The president's coming against him, and I like Massey for a handful of reasons, but I also don't like him for a handful of reasons, right? But Massey gets elected because people like him, right? That county does show up. We look at Lindsey Graham, no one likes him on either side. No one likes, how does this guy still have a seat, right? And for Texas, in Texas, it's a red state. Go to Dallas, go to Austin, go to San Antonio, go to Houston, go to Fort Worth. These places are not reminiscent of any type of conservative values whatsoever. And Florida has the same problem. Orlando, Miami, Pensacola, Tallahassee, right? Jacksonville, all of these places have pockets of deep blue, but we vote in these Republicans, right? Because Florida's all red. We vote in these Republicans, but then the way they vote when they get into office is anything but Republican. And it's barely even soft rhino material.
Well, and I have a theory behind that, and I don't even think it's so much of a theory. I think it's fairly factual and provable at this point. But we have so many rhinos, for instance, once again here in Texas, and if you follow any of the politics in Texas, they're talking about the rhinos all the time. And I honestly I hate that term, but there's no other term to use because it's just one of those terms that's
It's
overused, like
colloquial.
calling somebody a
Yeah.
racist. But
Yeah.
okay, let's just, for lack of a better term, we'll call them rhinos. But the reason they keep getting elected in over and over and over is because Democrats know they can't flip the state yet. So what they do is they keep these soft Republicans in there where they can basically launder their policies through them. And yeah, they'll make concessions that they wouldn't normally make if they fully had it and it fully was a blue house. But they're okay allowing, I'd say, Republicans to have a few softballs as long as they can pass their bad policies through them and basically launder those policies. And right now, what we're seeing is the Secretary of State has tried to dismiss the lawsuit to open or to close the elections. Right now, our primaries can be voted on by anybody. Anybody can come in and vote for anybody. There is no stipulation on you're a Democrat, you can't vote in the Republican primary. No, they can. And there's a reason for that because Democrats can show up and they can keep their favorite Republican in name only folks in their seats. And the true conservatives can't get them out.
We love to call Democrats retarded, and I think they are for the most part, but they're also very good at following orders. So it explains why they understand how these processes work. And talking about Texas, I mean, Tony Gonzalez is a prime example of rhinos in Texas. Tony Gonzalez, his voting record is absolutely disgusting. The guy's been censured. And this guy was someone who voted to keep LGBT policies in the military. This is a guy who not only wanted to provide hormone therapy services for adults in military, but also their children as well. You can look that up. He voted for that. Trump just endorsed him. I went to war over that because the person who should win that seat is Brandon Herrera. This is Texas
Yes.
26. I mean, that man, he is a friend of mine. I consider him a good friend. And he's he's one of these politicians that are just real people. What you hear on the campaign trail is what he's been talking about for 20 years. It's what he says in real life. He's not ashamed to have his values and principles, and he pushes them forward. So if anyone listening to this lives in Texas 26, please donate to Brandon, get out there, knock on doors. This is a winnable seat. And if you want to see change in the congressional makeup, we have to get out. We have to show it is possible. The vote still works in one or two of these races because they can't win all of them. They don't have enough funding or resources to preserve every rhino seat. Tony Gonzalez is on his way out. He only lost by 400 votes last season. Like, this is a winnable seat. So if
It
you guys
is.
want to put your energy something, I recommend going towards that guy and helping Brandon out.
I second that motion. My endorsement, my opinion means nothing in this regard, but I fully support Brandon Herrera. Get out there, vote for him, get this primary overturned because we need to get true conservatives back in Texas. I want to shift on you really quick, and before we start talking about your own run for politics, which you're currently undergoing, I want to talk about. I just want to pick your brain on the kind of fraud we've seen now. It started with Nick Shirley in Minneapolis. All right. I think that was a thread that got pulled that kind of opened up this conversation. And now we're seeing copycats all over the nation. But what we saw was this massive, potentially in the billions dollar fraud over the years, because now we're finding out that this was testified to back in 2018. People have known about this. And it just happened to go viral now because Nick Shirley did the hard work of getting out there and putting a well-produced, we'll just call it a documentary together, but an expose on what was going on in Minneapolis. And now we're seeing that there is daycare fraud, healthcare fraud, in-home care fraud all across the nation. And I'll, before I get your opinion, I will put this number out there. Now, I get it, it's just an opinion, but I would say that Elon Musk tends to know what he's talking about, considering he was running the whole Doge process. And he said the other day that he believes that fraud in this country can make up to $700 billion, 10% of our intake per
Yeah,
year.
RGB. Yep. I, I I wouldn't be surprised. I actually think it's probably higher. Because there are a lot of tertiary programs that go through. I mean, think like research funding, things like this. Research that never happens. It's very easy to have AI put in a couple prompts like, yes, here's my abstract, here's what our findings, and these things get buried, right? Um, as far as the Nick Shirley effects, what I'm calling it, you have to understand. I think Elon had the best intentions while he did his doging at the federal level, but bureaucracy curtailed a lot of what he was able to do because at the end of it, Congress still has to vote for these cuts. And the cuts, I think, were less than 1% of the entire budget. And what he actually did, the takeaway, I don't think his goal was necessarily, end all waste, fraud, and abuse at a federal level. It was to expose it. And that is what happened. Now, Nick Shirley, moving forward, connecting these dots, Nick Shirley, it is my understanding, he was given addresses, he was given locations to investigate by people who are serving in Minnesota, people who represent the House.
Interesting. I
And
didn't realize that.
it's inside baseball. I can't sources, things like that, but
Okay. Yeah.
he was given
Noted.
some of those sources to actually go investigate this. I mean, you think about how like bullseye, 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 bullseye he was with his reporting. He had to have some type of insider knowledge to know exactly where to go and find these people and show it. So it only makes sense that he had someone who would, and the guy he worked with obviously had his information. But my understanding is that this was passed down by people who work in Minnesota at a legislative level, and they were too afraid to bring it forward because someone got assassinated a few months prior to that for voting
Oh,
against a certain something,
yeah.
and they were afraid to be the people to bring this out. Now, the Nick Shirley effect, well, that's what I'm calling it, is the reason why Elon was successful but could never be fully successful is because Elon was still working in the confines of bureaucracy, right? In order for his things to get pushed, promoted, and passed, Congress would have to admit that the right hand shakes the left, and they are implicit in all of this fraud, waste, and abuse. What Nick Shirley is, it's not an anomaly. I think it's going to be the cure for the actual illness. Nick Shirley is an individual, and we live in a culture where the younger generation, the Zoomers, the millennials, the Xers, they like the clicks and likes. We're a very
Hmm.
social media platform, and what we did is we just showed overnight you will get 20 million views if you go expose this fraud because everyone that benefits both parties. The biggest thing that happened is I think it's this. Elon showed it's real. It allowed other people to believe that I can expose this as well using my own resources, my own energy and time. And that's going to cause a blanket fire across the entire nation of investigations, personally, individually pulling out fraud, up until the point where if we don't see mass arrest, we are talking mass riots from both sides. And the riots are, they will be kinetic, but they will also be in our voting blocks. They'll also be in people aren't paying taxes. They're not going to pay taxes, and
Yeah.
I'm excited about that. I've considered not doing it. Just
Uh,
come at me, bro.
right.
I've got a pardon that says that any crimes that I committed on that day while in the Capitol, I am exonerated from, and I'm here to officially admit out loud I was actually there to plan my tax evasion strategies moving from 2026 for the rest of my life. So I
Nice.
should be good to go.
You heard it here. That's brilliant. I love it. But no, you're 100% right. What happened when you say he was working within the confines of the bureaucracy, you had all of these things that we were aware of. I mean, if you use your brain and you how do I say this? Let's take USAID for instance. He exposed all the USAID fraud. And to the average person, you're like, what does USAID do? Other this organization that, like, I guess helps people overseas and makes things better in the world and something something. Show me the tangibles. But I've talked to too many folks. There's too much of our population that says, well, it's not your money, it's the government's money. And you're like, what? What? What did you do? Where do you think the government gets their money? They don't. They're not digging holes and laying wire and fixing people's plumbing. They take your money, dude. They have nothing tangible. They take your money, but there are too many people in our country who think this way. They've been taught this in school. In fact, my friend's son said this at one point. He said, I just don't understand why we can't help the poor people. Why can't we give them some of the government's money? They have plenty. And I don't fault him for that. He was a young kid, but that's what his teacher was telling him. That's what his teacher was indoctrinating with him. And there's plenty of that. And so what Nick Shirley did was, instead of, okay, we have this imaginary thing and this USAID or this NGO over here, whatever it is, and they're stolen money and this and that and these concepts that not everybody was going to relate to. You and I, we know how the process works, so we're going to understand what the fraud looks like. But your average citizen, but when you see it in Real Housewives of New Jersey style drama on your TV, and you see this real thing happening in real time where Nick Shirley is exposing it and showing, like, $10 million went here. This is an empty room. Nothing exists. That's reality. And then it sets home that you're like, wow, I struggled to pay I struggled to pay my electricity bill so I could afford groceries this week. And this guy made millions of dollars and was funding a beach property overseas and buying Lamborghinis and stuff. These are real things, by the way.
Yep. Yep.
And,
I don't.
you know, that sets home and you're like, that sucks. Yeah, I don't like Trump or whatever your case is. I'm leftist. I'm on the right, but that sucks, man. Like, I'm struggling. That's the
It's
reality of
it's
it.
one more push to populism is what it is. It's you know for your kid, by the way, if you want to answer that question, why can't we feed the poor people? It's because if you solve a problem, you no longer need the money to ask to solve a problem. It's just that.
Yeah, well put.
Um, there is what Trump did with populism. I'm on the fence with it. I know that historically speaking, when we have populist shifts, the pendulum goes one or two way very, very absolutely. And I'm not sure where we're going at the end of this. I have hopes that we're going in the right direction. Part of part of the reason why I have hope, and I've done some dooming, I've done some black pilling, but you have to understand I went to prison for this country, for this man.
Yes,
So
sir.
I have every right to question things and to ask for results and to ask for high profile arrests. What leads me to have more hope today than I had yesterday is what happened in Venezuela a handful of days ago. Not a single leak about that operation came out. Not a single one. 88 minutes, they went and got a president of a country and brought him back to the US, and no one knew about it. This thing just happened immediately. If we're talking about going after very, very powerful people, you can't have leaks. You cannot have leaks. You absolutely cannot have leaks. It will take longer than a year to put together cases because when you try these people, you're trying them in DC. You're not trying them, in some super hard right leaning place. You're going to try them in a jury of their peers who actually like them. And you better not miss if you bring cases against them. They need to be the strongest cases possible because you need to be able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that a crime was committed, they are implicated, and they are guilty. Otherwise, you will split the entire nation even more. And this, I wrote a book and I talk about this in the book where um, in 2021, before I went to the Capitol, I was listening to both sides, and I was considering if election fraud was real, what would it mean for us to admit that, uncover it, and then tell the general population it is real. This thing happened. Your country was stolen from you. I mean, it's not just civil war. There's a handful of people that will believe themselves that in presenting that truth to them, their country is being stolen.
Mm.
Like that is where they will land at the end of it. So when we're talking about Trump and populism and where we're going to land at the end of this, we need to so clearly and definitively be able to prove that these crimes are real, they were committed, that I'm willing to be patient and give just a modicum of grace that nothing has truly happened yet on the arrest front for high profile people. Because if it doesn't happen, man, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's it. Like we're cooked.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's sound advice. Because I am one of those people that I'm like, nothing's happened. I'm pissed. And I have my own avenue for that. My stuff personally is related to the COVID mandates and those folks who have not been reinstated in the military. And
Yeah.
I get
Didn't
frustrated
Hegseth put
when
out didn't Hegseth reinstate them?
no,
Or is that still
I
in the air?
that's that's a whole different topic. All right, so where we're at with that, we sat down, me personally, and a bunch of us. We had a very well put together discussion. We sat down with the undersecretary and the secretary on September 3rd, and we asked for them to put together task forces to go forward. And some of those task forces have been created as of now. The kind of bureaucratic stagnation behind that has been exponential. But the biggest issue here is we're talking about people who were in that room. I'm talking about people who were either on Zoom or physically in that room, and some of those individuals still have not been reinstated, and some of them have said they're not going to. And in fact, I'll be interviewing one person the next couple months. I will not. I won't say too much more because this person has a spouse in the military, and she doesn't want to affect
Yeah.
his career
Just
and all
fall out.
that. But
Yeah.
but what I will say is it's extremely frustrating because there is no clear guidance because a lot of these branches are still staffed and manned by the same individuals who push these policies in the first place. So the kind of uh, blockades that Hegseth has run into with trying to implement policies in the military have been significant. I mean, to the point where we have heads of policy, which multiple outlets. I did a huge expose on this individual, but multiple people like Amuse and other big accounts came out and did full exposés on this individual, and she is the head of policy at the DOW now, Department of War, but she was the architect of all of the DEI policies and of the COVID policies and everything else, and now she's in charge of making sure those same people that her policies got kicked out come back in. But she's extremely powerful. Her husband is a very powerful lobbyist. He has brought in hundreds of millions of dollars of business into the DoD from contractors around the area. Um, we're talking about some very powerful people here who are very well entrenched. And at the end of the day, Hegseth is not king. He has to play politics too. And it's not just a simple matter of going in there and firing somebody because these people are entrenched in Congress. And so it's a much longer conversation, but very few people have been reinstated and a lot more have just given up. But yeah,
That's
anyways, it's
very
frustrating.
unfortunate. This
It
is,
is.
it's akin to a lot of people ask me, do I think J6ers will get reparations for being unjustly prosecuted? And my answer is no. That's not coming. And I really hate to. There's a lot of people who really need it. They lost their vocations. They can't work in the towns they live in. They've lost their homes. A lot of them have gone through divorce. It's been really tumultuous for them, and they don't really have a way back into it. And that's very sad. But the premise of what you're talking about, getting people back in, the premise of making sure that J6ers who were unjustly prosecuted make sure they're whole, the first step in all of that is the government admitting they did something wrong. And historically speaking, that is not something they do.
Yeah,
And that's the crux of the argument, because if it's a if it's an if then statement. If you did something wrong, not only are you liable for damages, you are also, in my opinion, um, you could be brought up on charges, and maybe you should be. And if you are in a position where you ruined lives and you did it willingly, knowingly, and you stood in the way of restoring people, I consider that treason. I think these people should swing.
agreed. And that's funny because when I talked about that hit piece from Business Insider earlier, that was one of the things that they had mentioned in there. I had written on X that uh, the reality is that folks are going to have to swing for accountability. And so he thought he was
Yes.
going to get me, this individual, he wrote this and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I cut it out and I reposted it and I was like, and that was out of context from how I was using it, but I still hold true to it. And I double down on that statement. People need to swing for
What,
accountability.
these people don't like playgrounds? What are they talking about?
Right.
Fine, these people need a merry-go-round, whatever.
Hey, if you
More of a
guys can play with
quiet
your
guy.
words, I can play with mine. There you
Exactly.
go. So tell me, we're 35 minutes into this and I kicked the can down the road too long, but tell me about your run, what you're doing now and why. Why are you running for office?
Well, it's been 5 years. I have done, I guess, the whole influencer podcast circle side, and it's been fun. I've met a lot of good people. I've got a lot of good information, a lot of good advice. And at the end of the day, what I realized is, while all these things are really fun to do, it's fun to talk. It's good to tweet. You are pushing narratives. You are making sure that people are aware. You're waking them up. How does that affect my personal life when I log out of the internet and I go hang out with my kids? And when I came to that realization, I thought to myself, the only way I can make a change for my kids is to step up and make a change in my backyard. So in that, I started looking at positions in local government. What would I run for? And we batted around a handful of ideas. Like I ran for state rep. I could do even go for Congress. But it's those positions they're kind of there are a lot of outs with them. When you run for state rep, you do represent a district, but you don't really live in that district. You're in Tallahassee. You're not really held responsible and accountable for the things you vote for and things you say until the election cycle a couple years later. Running for local office, you are held accountable when you are at the grocery store, when you are having dinner with your family. And I think that this is not to be narcissistic. Like, it takes a bold person, a brave person to be willing to stand up and say, I am willing to take on your grievances on a day-to-day basis in my local community because I love my community that much. So in that, I decided to run for county commissioner, which has, I believe, to have the most impact on your day-to-day life and what your community looks like, not just now, but 20 years from now, because that is the planning cycles that they are responsible for. So I'm running for District 6 at large, Manatee County. You can go to my website. It is voteadamjohnson.com if you would like to donate. I know times are tough. Money is tight. They're sending them all to Somali refugees for daycares for kids that don't exist. But I do promise you, the small dollar donations, $5 at a time, I will put that to good use. We will make sure we market the correct way. We're going to win this race. And I'm not just asking for donations today. I'm asking for your faith and confidence that in my small town, I will be the example. I will be the beacon that you can do it too. Because it does not take much to stand up and say, I can fix this. I'm good enough. Have you seen the people running your local governments? You can do it. You want to make a change? Stop bitching about it. Get out of your seat. Go act. Go do something.
Yes. No, that's very well put. I my biggest focus right now is talking to people about local, talking about what you can do in your community, how you can build a better community to take care of your family, your neighbors, all those different things. And that plays into contingency stuff and developing a security network, but it also plays into right now in your everyday life. Okay. You cannot fix the federal government. You just can't, but you can have an impact on your local community. The pothole that never gets fixed out in front of your road, let's do something about it, man. Let's quit bitching about it, like you said, and let's do something about it. You can have an effect on that. But I also want to emphasize what you said about donations. Folks, these people aren't getting paid by China. They're not getting paid by NGOs laundering money into their pocket. They're not getting paid by billionaires and somebody who really has a passion to get them in there. They're grassroots. They are small guys. They need your money. $5 would go so far. You have no idea. If 100 of you gave $5, that's $500 right there. And that would do more than you can possibly imagine. I know this because I've been on the trail for months now with Doc Chambers. It's a reality. You gotta help out your local candidates. And if you're outside of the area and you believe in somebody and you can give more, then please do give more. Give them that boost. If it's just pocket change to you anyways, then give it to them, because these are guys, folks like you are the ones who are actually doing stuff, trying to make things happen and restore our country. Because like you said earlier, and I'm mixing up the wording a bit, but if we don't get something done in the short term and make some serious impact, we're gone. We're not going to survive what comes next.
Well, they've
So,
shown their cards. I mean, they're imprisoning us. They are shooting us, and I mean, they have no intention to stop. They don't. I mean, this is a sport for them. This is a sport for them. They enjoy it, and it's not to blackpill, not to doom and gloom. It's not going to be like a knee jerk reaction when they come back in. It's going to be slow because we do recognize what they're meaning to do. And in that, people will get complacent on the rights and like, well, I think everyone kind of cooled their jets off. No, they still have their plan. They still have their plan to take over. That will always, that is their book. That is their
yes.
strategy. So don't fall asleep. And again, local stuff is super important. You know, you have to understand that these communists have been at work for 6 generations. Like they've
Hmm.
they've been around a long time, putting a lot of work in. You're not going to win this in a 4-year election cycle. And technically speaking, if we lose midterms, we have a 2-year election cycle. That is it. Everything that can be done will only be able to be done in the next year because they will kneecap this administration more than Congress has, more than the Senate has, more than federal judges has. You think they've been fighting now? No, we're going to see fighting from the left like you've never seen before in the next 2 years if we lose midterms. So don't be so black pilled. We still have to go vote. We are not in a point where we have the luxury of having this rhetoric of, oh, I'm just voting between the two evils. Fuckers. They mean to put you in prison and shoot you. That is
Yeah,
what they mean to do. So if you want to be black pilled, that's fine. Still get out there and vote. Don't tell people to not vote. Holy shit. You have no idea how quickly things will turn down.
man, that's getting cut. That's getting cut and clipped. You're right. Um, Hmm, that's a lot to think about right there. They are putting people in prison, yes. So,
Yeah, sorry.
I don't know, that just derailed my whole thought. I gotta think about a whole bunch of stuff now, but you're right, you're right. That just gave me a whole thought for another line of effort I'm working on. But, anyways, dude,
Well, the
this
TPUSA event, the Amfest out in Phoenix, when we see Ben Shapiro, Tucker Carlson, they're all talking about, this, the rights being torn apart. They're tearing apart intentionally. They absolutely are because we have a group of neocons that are losing control to a populist movement. And what's so clear to me, we do this thing, and I'm going to get shit for this. I don't care. We do this thing where we focus on Israel. And we used to do things like focus on the Davos group. We used to focus on those things where like, no, it's not just one country, it is all the countries. It is global warfare that is coming against American policy and American culture. That is what's happening. Now listen, that's not to say that we can't critique countries, we can't critique people. By all means, keep doing that. But when you isolate on one country and continue to push one ideology, what you're actually effectually doing is you are You are being reductive to why people showed up and voted for Trump and believed in his message in the first place. And the message was this: America first is America only. It's not that I don't want to send money to Israel. It's that I don't want to send money to anyone, to anyone.
Bingo.
Median age for people who can buy homes is in the mid 40s right now. We have kids that are living with their parents. My grocery bill is almost $3,000 a month. Granted, I have 5 teenage sons. It's going to be more. People can't afford to eat. People can't afford to live. Credit card debt is rising. One of the metrics, I can ramble for hours. One of the metrics I love looking at is, you know what a payday advance is, like AMSCOT?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I had to take a couple when I was younger because just,
I
I
did
had a bunch of
too.
young kids.
Oof.
And if
Dangerous.
you look at the percentage of people who are having to take them out now, as opposed to 2 years ago, as opposed to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, people are not just taking them out, they're taking them out to feed themselves. People are taking loans to feed themselves. At Walmart, you can use Affirm, which is a bi-weekly payment system to pay for your groceries. And that
No
is a
way.
commonly used, I'm not shitting you. So when I say things like, we need to win the midterms, we have to keep pushing, that needs to resonate you with you very deeply. Do not let this idea that MAGA is falling apart. Do not isolate on one country. Stay consistent. America first means America only. I'm not just talking about Israel. I'm talking about Ukraine. I'm talking about everywhere. We need to
Everywhere.
stop.
Right.
We are broke. We are broke. We need to focus on that and move forward.
We have to fight this all the time with Doc and people. Well, I'm not voting for him if it's something Israel, 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 and I can't stand this singular boogeyman that people have created. And Doc has been very clear. He's like, listen, I'm not taking money from anyone. I'm not taking money from Israel. He's Greek American. Now he's first generation. He was born here. His father came over here, but he's like, I wouldn't take money from a pack that had ties to Greece. I wouldn't take money from a pack. You know, I have worn 2 flags on my uniform, an American flag and a Texas flag, and that is it. I am
Yep.
only interested in Texas first, America first. That is it. But you get these guys who hyper focus on these singular boogeymen, and it becomes everything to them. And then all of the world's problems are due to that. So yeah, well
And
said.
it's because it's salacious. It's because it gets clicks and likes. It is a
Uh-huh.
very taboo subject. There are multiple countries you can't talk about it; they will arrest you. So I mean, they have good reason for bringing up conversations. I don't want to be diminutive to conversations that they're having.
Like you
One
said,
point in
have the
particular,
conversation, be critical, but
one in
embrace all of it.
particular, there was the cybersecurity officer from Israel. You heard about the story in Las Vegas? They did a sex operation sting. Did you hear about this?
I don't think so.
In Vegas about 6 months ago, Israeli cyber official is caught up with, I think, 11 other individuals trying to meet up with young children for
Ruh-roh.
explicit activities. Um, Las Vegas PD, DHS, FBI were working. And when I say that, and people will think like, oh, the FBI was there. Typically, in these local communities, you have a liaison from the FBI, a liaison from DHS. So it's not like, there was a whole like FBI was involved in this. No, they had liaisons. These people were arrested. One of them was that Israeli cyber chief. And within 24 hours, he was back in Israel. They did not
Holy
suspend his
smokes.
passport. He's just gone. Well, it gets a little deeper than that. I brought this up like this looks bad. And for all the people saying, it's Israel, this looks really, really, really bad right now. Can we not arrest one person and keep him here? When his court case comes, and I bring this up and I get
Yeah.
eradicated online for even bringing this up. I bring this up and I get all these people telling me, misfit patriot, these people, they're like, look, he's going to come back for his court hearing. Obviously he has to. He's going to show up for his bench, all these things, right? And I'm like, I'm going to bookmark this and I'm just going
Yeah,
to
right?
keep Googling it
No, he's
until I
not.
get dates. Well, he's supposed to be in there for his first hearing. He's not there. His attorneys show up via Zoom and say, oh, we were understanding he didn't have to be here. The judge is like, I never
Yeah.
ordered that. I actually ordered the opposite of that. He had to be here. He needs to be here. You cannot flee for this crime in Las Vegas and that district. Those type of crimes, you are not allowed to leave that county. You have to remain there. The other 11 are still there. 24 hours later, she says, it's fine. You can stay in Israel for the hearings. And like, it's stories like that that
Holy smokes.
that that do make me say, look, I'm allowed to ask questions, and you should be asking questions about any country that has special protections.
Well,
But
yeah.
it is not all about Israel. And we have to fucking stop that because it is ripping everything apart. And honestly, it's kind of fucking retarded. We have more pertinent issues that we need to be talking about today that affect me, my grandchildren that I'll never meet, and everyone else around us. So let's focus on that and get shit done.
Well, I hope people take that to heart because I agree completely. And it's impossible to have that conversation, like you said, with the masses because you get these hyper focused people on one side or the other, and you can't have a common sense conversation. Hence politics or anything else right now. I mean, everything is so partisan and so split, and you have to pick a camp. And I'm like, no, you really don't. You can talk about things from a logical, common sense standpoint and be critical of numerous issues without being hyper focused on a singular issue that you're ignoring everything else around you. So yeah,
Yeah,
well
have
said.
conversations, but they should be tertiary compared to the things that should be primary. We can't afford groceries. People are being outpriced of their homes and having to sell and downsize. That is a real issue that affects us today. And we can
Yes,
kick that can down the road. We can still continue to talk about that, but good Lord, man, there's some pressing issues we really should be focused on.
I agree. On that note, I'm going to wrap this up,
All
but
right.
what do you want to say in closing?
In closing, try to stay as positive as possible. The world is a very tumultuous place right now, but if you have family, like you should be with them at night, you should be hanging out with them, you should be making sure that the things that are actually real remain real in your life. The internet is only like a little bit real. So stay focused on things that are good in your life and everything else will work themselves out from there. As far as ways you can support me, obviously go to voteadamjohnson.com. You'll kind of see what we're pushing for our local county. And I think we're going to win. We're going to have a good campaign. If you want to support me and my family just financially, I have another website. It is called unlicensedfurnituremovers.com. I wrote a book about my January 6th experience. It's written in satire. It's meant to be funny, but it's also very real. And if you'd like to know exactly what happened to all of us who were arrested, what our lives look like, I definitely recommend you go to our websites and buy my book. I'll sign it for you, send it out myself, and hope you enjoy the read. I'll make sure I'll send you a copy.
Yeah, send me all those links too. If you send me the links to everything, just so I don't have to pull it out of here. I'll add that on the show notes, and anybody can easily reference that. But no, that's perfect. Um,
I appreciate you, man.
yeah, no, I appreciate you, dude. This has been a great conversation. Thanks for coming on, man.
Of
And I
course,
wish you
thanks.
the
We'll talk
best
to you
in your
soon.
run.
Thank
But
you, Sam.
yeah, absolutely. Hang on just a second before I stop this so that this thing doesn't close out. I had an issue the other day where a guy had to turn his computer back on for like 3 hours just to get it to upload. And I'm like, good
Oh,
grief,
God.
man. Sorry, dude. So you learn the process, but
Technology making everything easier. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. Please like and subscribe, and we will be back soon. Probably next week. I've got a big one lined up with a farmer. Farming is something I want to talk about and the kind of complications they've had in this nation. So I'll talk to you guys later.